I'll introduce myself. My name is Max Shelkoff. I am a senior solutions consultant at Engage by Cell. I spend 90% of my day working with folks in workforce development across the country. And I'm very excited, a panel of esteemed gentlemen here. I'll let Scott introduce himself first. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. My name is Scott Hotard. I'm with Cirrus Workforce. I'm the Vice President of Sales. We partner with staffing providers that are in charge of work experience programs. We are an employer of record services.
Fantastic. And Mr. Rice, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Rice. I'm the Chief Executive of Talent Census, and hopefully, Max has some closed captions that'll come up underneath me in case you can't understand what I'm saying. But we are a workforce development technology company, and our aim is to be the global leading architect of intelligent workforce systems. So it's lovely to be here, and looking forward to being part of this panel.
Love it. Thank you again for joining me, gentlemen. Today's topics, tech and tactics for thriving through funding cuts, right? So kind of a doom and gloom title, right? But we're going to do our very, very best to navigate around that and kind of talk real, right? Because these funding cuts are here. We hear about it all the time. And today's goals are really going to be to kind of review the current landscape of what that looks like and discuss what tools are available, what practices we've seen, and help kind of brainstorm around some of these different things that are going on with the funding cuts. And we've got a little bit of a poll here. What are your biggest concerns at the moment? And this is select all that apply. So, with these kind of funding cuts that are coming our way, what are some of the things that you're most concerned about? What you're running into the most? What challenges are you trying to overcome? And then obviously, the three of us are going to kind of discuss some tools that not only our respected companies offer, but what we've seen just through practical solutions and new processes, implementation, advice, all the different things that we've come across, really in kind of the past 6 to 12 months since all of this has kind of started to happen here. Um, Perfect. And here are some results. So we've got, not shockingly here, participant outcomes is going to be the majority, right? Because that's all really what we're all here to do is help people get the resources, get back into employment, and really complete your job and all of the above, right? Who isn't concerned about all of it and how to kind of navigate all the different challenges that are associated with funding cuts. So, all right. So, current landscape, I have seen it all over the board from super small cuts. I've actually this week spoke to somebody whose funding went up. So maybe it isn't across the board everywhere, but I think they were one of the very few minorities. But some of the more drastic funding cuts I've seen have been in that 40-50% range. And everybody knows the challenges that are accompanied by funding cuts, right? So, less staff. Hopefully, you still have the tools to maintain the jobs that you need to do, maintain the programs that you offer, and all simultaneously, your metrics aren't changing, right? So you still have the job that you need to do and the numbers that you need to hit, and potentially you have less resources at hand to handle that. So that's kind of what we're going to discuss today in this current landscape. Steven, what are some of the big cuts you've seen? Have you seen any earth-shattering ones that stick out in your head?
From our perspective, kind of looking in, we obviously see that in terms of the staffing cuts that are there, but also the need for looking at how to do more for less and making sure that there is a very good you know opportunity to make sure that those performance metrics are met. But across the board, some of the clients that we're working with are having to move things about, to try and see where they can, get the best from what they have. So it is with all of our clients, we've seen it quite readily.
Yeah, very true. And I see Anna probably threw in the chat window. If anybody does have any questions during this, please don't hesitate to throw your questions in that little chat window on the side there. And one of my colleagues will get it answered for you, and we'll circle back at the very end to answer a little Q&A session for everybody. So next slide, little introduction of Engage by Cell and who we are. So we're going to run through kind of what each one of our companies do. And then we're going to have a little brainstorm session on what kind of different tools and tactics that we can offer, right, to help navigate some of these changes that are occurring. Engage by Cell, we've been in business for 20 years now, over 20 years. Again, nationally, across the entire country, I believe we operate in over 35 states now, and a couple of mostly with workforce development boards, but obviously hundreds of different kinds of organizations and workforce development. All right, next slide, pretty please. So what solutions does Engage by Cell offer? So pretty straightforward here, and then I'll kind of recap with how these help navigate some of these. But text messaging sounds like an old technology, right? But everybody knows government does not run at the speed of sound. We run at the speed of molasses. So texting has really become kind of a revolutionary idea in government communications. I know when I started my career, kind of dating myself, 15 years ago, I was pretty coached diligently. Never, ever, ever text anybody. It's unprofessional, etc. Right? And the only way I can get a hold of Scott or Steven when I need them is to shoot them a text message. So it's drastically changed, and that kind of adoption of texting has transitioned into case management as well, right? So communicating one-on-one with your stat or your customers and helping them through the intake process or the employment process or even on the back end of the employment verification and really just bridging that communication gap that's occurred. Because I don't know about you two, but I get about 300 emails a day. How many of them do I glance at? Hopefully half, right? So we're reserving email for when we can get to it, and that's the same for our clients, right? And phone calls, we all have caller ID. We all get spammed out. People are vetting out phone calls, waiting to read that transcript of that voicemail or listen to it when they can. So text them, right? And in our platform, you can have one too many. So what that looks like, couple clicks of a button, everybody receives a text saying, hey, job fair this Friday, click here to register, down to the one-on-one communication. So much more effective, much more efficient, helps save you time, and you can pretty much guarantee that they're going to consume those text messages. Mobile web apps and forms and document uploads all kind of play together. Forms and document uploads live inside of our mobile web apps. Many of you are going to be familiar with the term, right? Or the IT term native application. What that is just the hard downloaded app that we all have 40, 50 of on our phone. And we transition to this mobile web app platform. So what is it? It looks, feels, and acts as close to that hard downloaded app experience as possible, but it doesn't have the hard barrier of that, or the hard download barrier of that traditional application. And why we did that is because if I was Scott's case manager and I was trying to get a hold of Scott and I get Scott on the phone or I text him and I say, hey, buddy, do you have an Apple? Do you have an Android? Scott goes, oh, I got an Android. I got to go, okay, go to this app store, download this correct app. Scott, at the end of the conversation, says, I don't want this on my phone, right? So the mobile web app is entirely web-based. So what it looks like, scan a QR code, boom, it pops up immediately, or it pairs really well with the texting because you can push out a text, clickable link. They click that link, up pops the mobile web app that might have your job board. It might be resources from Talent Census. It might be metrics learning resources. It will have a form or document uploader, so all your intake forms. And it has some AI tools to help write resumes, et cetera, things like that. And then text chat is going to be the core case manager tool to help automate some of those one-on-one conversations that need to happen. So advantage here, this is really where we dive into what the big problem is with the funding cuts, right? So this is a very easy and affordable solution to start automating some of this outreach, right? So case managers, Steven, Scott, you both have been in sales before in your life. how awesome and fun is it to pretend that you're a case manager, sales, right? And sit down and make those 100 phone calls a day? Do you love doing that? Scott, how many calls do you make a
Not
day?
only is the answer no, but we actually have incorporated the whole texting via onboarding for
Mhm.
all of our participants. So I mean, yeah, like totally, because especially with the youth, they're just not going to answer a number they don't recognize.
100%, 100%. And that goes for those case managers that might have upwards of that 50, 100 plus people now due to staff reductions, right? So how can you make their life easier and more effective is automating some of that outreach, right? And it is personalized. So if I was the case manager handling Stephen and Scott, they're going to receive a text that says, "Hey, Stephen, don't forget, I'm here to help you write that resume if you need assistance. Just feel free to text me back," right? And Stephen can have that open dialogue back and forth with myself if he needs to. And the higher engagement, I kind of touched on it briefly, but if the tools in your tool bag are email and phone calls, and I'll pick on email, and I always pick on myself first. So let's pull up I don't know if you can see it, but I have 34,000 unread emails in my personal Gmail account, right? That's going to be pretty common. Steven, how many you got? You looked like you
That's
were
given
jotting
that's given me all levels of anxiety. That
it.
mine isn't quite that bad, but it's bad, you know.
You must not buy shirts like I do off Old Navy because I think I get 10 of them a day from them. So that's probably at least half of those. So point being is the kind of effectiveness of email. If you're getting a 20% open rate, you're knocking it out of the park, right? And we need to see those engagement numbers way higher than 20% to do our jobs effectively. So text messages have a 95% engagement rate. And you can see next to my 35,000 unread emails, I got zero unread text messages. And that's going to be the case for most, right? So not only are they much, much more likely to consume that text message and actually read it, if they're going to respond to it, they're going to do it in 90 seconds or less. So it's not only much more likely that they're going to read it, but they're going to respond to it much quicker too. And compliance, obviously, that is a huge, huge, huge deal in this industry, and it's getting more and more prevalent and important. And these two will definitely be more expertise in that area than myself. But where Engage by Cell comes into that is it really peels back that third wall and paints the story and the picture of how the results happened, right? So you'll be able to pull all of those conversations that happened and show and demonstrate, hey, Max texted back and forth with Steven from the point that he first walked into the intake or into the job center, filled out the intake form on the mobile web app, and then Max helped him write his resume, and then Max congratulated him when he knocked that job interview out of the park, and then there's the whole deal wrapped up with a bow, right? So it helps kind of paint that entire picture of data from A to Z. And scalable, like I mentioned, it is very scalable. We work with organizations that have, 5 people up to statewide, right? And everything in between. And like I mentioned, it's not rocket science, but it is something that's super effective. Um, Next slide, pretty please. So I will let Scott dive into his tools a little bit, and then we're all going to kind of brainstorm, or then Steven goes, but then we'll brainstorm at the end here. Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, Max. I just wanted to say that I'm still rocking a AOL email address as my personal from 1997, and it's up to date. Just letting you know.
Impressive.
So, thank you again for allowing us to be a part of this. So, as I was mentioning earlier, Cirrus Workforce basically is a staffing firm, and we've been around since 2005. And we primarily focused on the engineering and technical side, privately owned, woman owned, national. 30 wound up growing into 33 states in America. We had our president and CEO come join us in 2019 and bought our company in 2021. I was actually able to talk to him about how workforce is such a major part of every state and every region, and how we had started to partner with workforce boards and service providers for their work experience programs, and how there's just a lot of need out there for using a service like us as the employer of record. So I was actually able to talk to him to convince the board to start our own company called Serious Workforce, and we actually created that in 2020. So since our inception, we're now in 8 states. So we've been steadily growing with not only just workforce boards, community colleges, for-profits, nonprofits, anybody that's basically hosting one of these work experience programs is kind of a fit for us. So, why do companies use this? Well, essentially, if you're going to be outsourcing your payroll, it allows your team members to do what they do as far as your career coaches, case managers, to focus on qualifying participants and going out and finding work sites and joining those two together. Um, it allows you to tap into new talent pipelines without increasing full-time payroll. Again, when it comes over to the budget cuts, that's one of the first things our customers are looking at is how can they keep their current staff, in check. And that's unfortunately one of the main things that has to go just when you see these kind of cuts. Um, and it's just very, very unfortunate. We also, the majority of our clients who basically are doing all the onboarding themselves, um, they're doing all the HR workload. So all you have different departments that are part of that. So you've got your accounting department who are processing timesheets and cutting paychecks. Your HR team is going to be dealing with any kind of workers' comp injuries. And also, we've had it so many times to where part of the duties of the career coach or case manager is literally, instead of focusing on those qualified candidates or work sites, they're having to go collect paper timesheets every single week, right? And that's old and antiquated, And then there's also delivery of paychecks. We still have people that are doing that. And so, the more and more I saw this, I'm like, let us take all of this burden off of you because we can do this and we can do this electronically. Right. And so it's just been kind of a game changer when it comes to the old antiquated way versus, okay, I'm using this company to be able to do all this for us. You want to go to the next slide? Okay. So we use a software. It's a staffing software called Aviante, and I'll keep this short, but essentially, you know, a lot of the majority of our customers are kind of medium to large size providers, right? So many of them are dealing with sometimes 22, 24 counties in the region, right? And so a lot of those areas are very rural. Not, if you've got a city, that's one thing, but when you have rural areas, it's kind of hard to be able to have somebody drive to a physical brick and mortar location, to do their paperwork or fill out their application for everything. Um, we noticed that we have other competitors that are basically small firms and they have brick and mortar located in one location. However, if you're that one brick and mortar is in the region of 22 or 23 counties, it's really tough for people to, come on in and fill out an application to start this work-based learning program. So essentially, we do everything virtually. We issue a participant their login credentials for Aviante. We submit their paperwork for them. We actually, since a lot of these are youth and they've never actually had a job before, we kind of handhold them through the onboarding process. And then once they complete their own boarding, they can start their work experience program. And as they start their working, if you go to the next slide, I'm sorry, one more. I thought there was a timesheet actually. Okay, but that's okay. Um, it's time to submit their timesheets. This is actually a screenshot right here of what it looks like for them to fill out their timesheet on a daily basis. Once they work for the week, they submit their time card. Time card approvers are set up to make sure those hours are correct. And once those hours are approved, they're getting sent to payroll to process. And then once it's processed, the employees are actually gonna be paid via direct deposit each Friday. So each week, the individuals are getting paid. A number of our customers in the past, they've set it up to they would pay once a month, and that's really, really tough. In some cases, twice a month. We do it weekly, right? So overall, if you're actually able to utilize a third-party provider like ours, those participants, you just send them to us. We would basically onboard those individuals, so it frees up all of your back office and front office needs, focus primarily on qualifying participants, finding work sites, joining those guys up. I'm sorry, can you go back, Anna? Right, thank you. Weekly payroll processing, that's definitely something that we strive to do to make sure all participants are paid on a weekly basis. We do partner with ADP for the weekly remittance of federal, state, local taxes. They're also able to access their W-2s virtually. Employees also have 24/7 access to Aviante. If they never ever needed to update, say, a copy of their IDs or their W-2s or tax forms, they can do that at any time. They're also able to access their W-2s come January as well of the following year. And then lastly, our onboarding team is really great, especially working with youth who've never actually worked before. And they literally will hold their hand step by step for each form and help them fill out those forms and get that out of the way in a timely manner. Next slide. So overall, utilizing a company like us, if you're getting hit with major budget cuts, if you look basically the overall cost as a business for your HR department by hiring staff in that area, the accounting team, case management team, it basically is kind of a wash, or it's actually a savings over time if you're a small to medium program. We're able to get people onboarded within 20 minutes to 2 days, right? I mean, it just depends on how quickly that participant is going to jump on their computer or their phone or tablet and do all of their paperwork. Clients can find, confidence. We make sure that we pay all wages. We take care of all insurance, workers' comp. We hold, all of the employee personal information. And basically, we also work with our clients when they get audited. We can give them any information that they require at any time. And then lastly, scalability. It's easy to expand and serve more interns and employers when you're focused on doing that job. So,
And I want to, sorry, one stop here. So I think the main takeaway for me, and I do have a question, Scott, about kind of the process, right? So
sure.
the main process or the main takeaway is people who could be focusing on their more important tasks, right? If I'm a case manager and HR individual trying to help someone through this paid opportunity, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I would have to spend time chasing paper trail hour pay stub kind of things. Is that right?
Absolutely. I've had prospects which turned into clients that literally would spend their case management team would have to go to work site to work site to work site to collect timesheets every single week. Not only that,
Crazy.
but they would have to deliver from one location to another to their accounting department. One was a community college, had two campuses an hour apart. Another is a workforce board that literally they work 2.5 hours apart. So they have to get two individuals each week to meet in the middle, right? And then hand off time cards. And then a second time that week to actually hand deliver paychecks, right?
So,
So
right. So
it just still blows my mind, that it's still being done this way in a lot of different areas. And
that's
it's
crazy.
just it's just something. So when we say, guys, not only are we going to onboard these individuals, we're going to do it electronically. We'll get these
Right.
guys knocked out quickly, but they're going to submit their time cards on a weekly basis. We'll send them out reminders if they haven't filled it out. We'll send reminders to the time card approvers. And then, we're going to ask you for help. Okay, finally,
Mhm.
that's like the last straw. If
Right.
neither is done, we need your assistance. We're here to get these individuals paid.
And
Right. And
Stephen, you're
so,
the CEO of a company. What is the largest cost of running a company typically? Right? Labor. So
yeah,
if your employees were
100%.
running around Northern Ireland collecting, collecting timesheets so that you could cut checks on Fridays or once a month or whatever it would be, it sounds like Scott would provide a pretty good solution. And
Absolutely.
that blows my mind with and this is what we're going to get into in a little bit after Stephen, uh, some of these processes, right? I mean, labor costs are typically the most expensive part of running any organization, whether it's government, it's private, whatever it is. And changing some of these processes to better fit modern solutions are going to save money. I mean, how could it not possibly save money changing that procedure into an electric process and involving organizations like Scott's and getting involved in? And then I think ultimately not only saving money, but then your results in the actual job that the case manager is supposed to conduct, right? Of helping people through these processes, they're going to have way more time rather than meeting somebody in the middle in the county over trying to get some timesheets put together. They're going to be able to focus on their actual job and help people through what the programs that they need to succeed, right? Great examples. Thanks for sharing, Scott. Stephen, dive on in, my friend.
Well, hello everybody, and thanks very much for having me. I'm going to start off by saying I'm going to go through this, but I'm not a techie, right? My background is very much, you can hear my accent. I grew up in a place called Northern Ireland. If you Google Northern Ireland, which I probably wouldn't recommend you doing, you'll know that we had a few little troubles a few years ago. So my background, you can either be a doctor, a teacher, a lawyer, or a peace builder, and I went down the peace builder route. So my background is in peacekeeping, is in workforce related growth, labor market growth. And then I moved across to Sector Skills Council, covering Ireland, the UK, and Europe, understanding the connection between education, the government, and the labor market. And I suppose the catalyst for me starting the company 10 years ago was the fact that I was getting frustrated at the systems and processes that were in place that caused inertia whenever it came to people being able to utilize services or to make a road into the labor market. So we are architecting intelligent workforce systems, and I'll talk a little bit about how we do that. And we're a little bit different. If we can go to the next slide. Some of you on the call today, you may have experienced case management systems. Some of you will have positive stories. Some of you will have negative. But generally speaking, when a system is rolled out, what will happen is it will come from on high and it will be pushed down. And we have to adapt our working environment to suit that. And obviously, the case management systems that are in place are there for gathering information, recording metrics, and doing performance reports. We see the world a little bit differently in that actually the most important person here is you and is your clients. And we look at how we can give a different experience by the way that we look at technology and how that technology can enhance the work that you do. Our work has spanned across multiple countries. We came across the United States over the last 6 years. We've been working in a range of states, looking at how we can improve systems and processes. Some of the things our company's been involved in, we developed a soft skills training through gamification for the United Nations peacekeepers right across the world. We've developed joint training programs for emergency services, and also our focus has been very much on workforce development, case management. So we do some of the typical things and around centralizing multi-stakeholder data in a single, easy-to-use system. How many times have you looked across your case management? You would like it to be connected, that it would talk, that it would integrate with some of the tools that you use. That was very much the first thing that we looked at, is how can we integrate with things that work well. That includes real-time tracking, not having to wait for information, being able to pull that information out when you need it, either locally or at a state level or even at a federal level. Engagement and reporting. Duplicate data entry is one of those things that makes people bang their heads against the wall. Why do I have to put in my information 10, 100 million times? You shouldn't have to. Technology these days should not require you to do that. So what we look at is enhanced automations, and I'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by that, and the utilization of AI. One of the big fears that we have is that some technologies are putting AI on top of certain pieces of their technology, whether that's for resume building or whether it be for a specific component. And AI is good, but actually harnessing AI in a way which can delve deeper in a secure way to be able to give you things like skills forecasting, labor market forecasting, and enhanced matching metrics are very much the future, but they have to be done in a way which is respectful of people's information and also in a way which can really enhance the services. And then finally, obviously generating reports for compliance, making sure that it integrates with the services that it needs to integrate to get the information where it needs to go, and stakeholder updates in minutes rather than waiting a long time for that. So the question for me is why, and if we go on to the next stage and the next slide, our DNA is about engagement. And as I said at the start, we're not techies, we're people. We're workforce people. Our staff are all either experienced in the American workforce system or workforce in general, and we understand you. I want you to look at this picture that I have on the screen at the minute on the right-hand side, and apologies for its name. We call it the murder board. People ask you what your job is, and you try to explain to them what it is. And sometimes it can be difficult to do so because what you're looking at here on the right-hand side is a dissection of just business services. Every red line is a piece of paper, a movement of an individual, or some information that goes between the departments just solely in business services. Now, you can imagine what that looks like for the people services side of the business or for any other OJT or whatever it might be. What we did with our clients is we sat down and we asked them, how can we make your life easier? Let's develop this from the bottom up, not force something from a high that you have to use. So a human-centered methodological approach. How many of those red lines can we automate? And what we did was we went ahead and we automated. And then the other piece as well is not working in silos. One of the biggest mistakes that we can ever do is rely on one data system or one piece of technology, but that doesn't mean that we have to use them in isolation. So one of the things that we've been doing is how do we make sure that we integrate what is good, what is working well? Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's focus on the things that are good, enhance those, and make sure that we can look at the processes that can be automated to make your life easier. And if we go on to the next slide. So for us, what this means, and you can see a little bit of a screenshot in terms of our user design and stuff like that. We try and be a little bit funky, use nice colors. Nobody likes a database style format anymore. We like to use wizards and cool things like that. But what this means is quicker and more enjoyable participant and staff interactions. Let's give our customers something that makes you feel proud. The whole process experience from pre-intake and reporting should be good for what you need to do. And as Max said, 99% of people who get involved in the service industry who are there to help people to find their next job or to navigate the system, you got into this work because you want to help people. You did not get into this work because you wanted to be a data entry clerk. So what can we do to make sure that we're giving you that opportunity to help people? Compliance confidence with logical automation. And what we mean by that is that you're not having to go back and second guess yourself every time you do a report at the end of the month or the end of the quarter. Real-time insights, so getting information instantly, not having to press a button and wait for 3 years and 6 camel rides for a piece of reporting to come down. This should be instant and you should see it in a way that makes sense for you. And then finally, that human-centered breath of fresh air, the ability to sit back and say, this is really helping me, but not only that, it's really helping my clients. It's really helping the participants. And it's making sure that it is an assistant that is there to help me to fulfill my job, not something that I dread turning on my computer in the morning to have a look at, and then really regret turning on my laptop to have a look at it. So that breath of fresh air. So that's what we do. We're Talent Census. We're operating in a number of areas. We're pushing the idea that actually these systems can be enjoyable, believe it or not. They can be something that really harnesses the ability for people to do things, to do more things with less. Let's utilize technology to think about how it can free up your time and do those things that really should be automated. So thank you very much for your time.
I love that. I think the conclusion was here the biggest gap, right? And you can go to the next slide, pretty please, Anna, because I want to open it up a little bit. From listening to Scott and Stephen talk, and then myself, obviously, I love to hear myself talk, but the biggest thing here is, and Stephen, what you said with, you get into workforce development because you want to help people, right? And we're not data entry clerks. We're not folks driving across counties to chase down timesheets. We're not phone call warriors trying to make 150 phone calls a day to chase people around. I think the overarching kind of gap in my conclusion from listening to the conversation so far is time management and efficiency, right? So it's the biggest gap that technology can fill by automating to enable folks like yourselves to actually do the job that you signed up to do, right? And I'm sure there's a million different ways. Stephen, I know you're a big advocate for changing up processes. Is there any one or two processes that you have seen with your platforms that have made the world's difference or anything like that?
Yeah, there's a really interesting one in an area that we work around pre-intake. So when somebody is walking into a center and you're gathering information from them, what we find in some areas is that there's still a process for looking at paper files for understanding how somebody can match with a program or some support. For us, it was about how do we make sure that we can automate that. But instead of asking the typical questions that you would ask, and we understand that in our world where we work in workforce, we know the jargon that we talk, and there's a lot of words that make sense to us. It's like its own dialect. But whenever it comes to working with people who are at their most vulnerable sometimes and really need support, sometimes in that instance, it's about asking questions in a way which makes sense for people. And that's what we did. So we actually looked at the psychology of how you're asking a question to elicit a response. And when you get that information, how do you make sure that you're filtering, or not filtering, sorry, you're navigating, helping to navigate people through to the actual support that they need. And the other thing that we've looked at is the automation for human error. When you're having a conversation with somebody and there's the opportunity that a support service might be there that they may miss out on because the question wasn't asked in the right way. They may have been 90% eligible for a program, but being able to actually see that on a screen in front of you, to be able to look at that criteria and then be able to challenge that, is a process that we've put in place more recently in an area, and it's seen great results.
That's fascinating. I know with what we do, I really think just and Scott, you touched on this with that brilliant example of the timesheets, just the lack of digitization, right? I mean, that just screams out to me of just efficiency and how to ask the right questions, get that data, and then what you do with that data, right? I know reporting wise is becoming more and more critical. And that's something that I see constantly is I get a last minute phone call and they're like, hey, we got to turn in this data. What do we do? How do we do it? Things like that. And so having that ability to not only kind of navigate the questions and get those intake processes, but kind of help establish that pipeline for them too, right? So that's something that I see where your murder board demonstrates the complexity of it. And I want to stay, I'm taking that image and I'm going to use that. I hope that's okay. Because I see that same thing, and I'm sure you do too, Scott, where the amount of exchange that happens on a day-to-day basis is it's daunting, right? And I think a lot of times those things aren't vertically integrated like that. They're all over the place, and helping them with technology kind of establish what that pipeline flow looks like and automating it through that process is another huge way. Scott, do you have any good examples or stories of where what you've seen lately that you've stepped in and saved somebody a ton of time or some of effort?
Yeah, I mean, so if we have a new service provider and let's say they're hosting a new grant in a new state, many times, even though their contract is signed, it turns out that they're going to need some additional reporting. That's typically what is standard, right? And we didn't really factor that because it was an unknown, and I mean it's happened more than once, but fortunately, again, our software is dealing with employment. This is what we do, right? So we're actually able to to pivot if we need to, and basically run customized reports to give the data and what's needed by the state or workforce board or
Hmm.
DOL, right?
Hmm.
Um, Another thing that I wanted to add too, which is technology is such a major thing, right? We actually have incorporated through Aviante. It's called 24/7, and it allows us to do a much easier job on the back end as far as onboarding because we're able to do it in mass. It can actually be accessed by an app on their phone or tablet, and they're actually able to just log in with that app. All the documents or sized to fit the screen, and it just makes things a lot easier. So,
Fantastic.
um,
One thing I did want to touch on too, because I'm running into it more and more, is how to find new sources of funding, right? So WIOA, everybody knows, as Stephen mentioned, learning a new dialect in workforce, right? And that's accompanied by a thousand different acronyms, but the one everybody knows is WIOA, right? And as that budget goes through its ups and downs, I can give an example of a recent client in Arkansas who found a state grant, state provided grant, and they were able to secure the funding. Another one is a special projects grant that was utilized out of the state of Ohio. It actually came down from the DOL, and they were able to use that funding to purchase Engage by Sell platforms, launch it across 43 states, and it's been revolutionary for them. And the time save and the reporting and all the data, helping paint that picture. I definitely want to be conscious of Scott and Steven's time. But do you two, have you heard of any other funding streams or any creative pilot programs or anything that's helped people kind of get something off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, one of the things that we've seen with one of our clients in the States is that, the the WIOA budget forms a smaller part of how they actually operate, and they go for additional funds, whether it be private or whether it be local grants or things like that. But again, the big challenge for them, and the big opportunity is how you measure that, and it shouldn't be on a separate system to what you do other things. It should be part of the collective metrics of how you see the real impact of the work on the ground. So one of the things that we did working with them was how to track mixed funding sources. And a big part of that is telling the storytelling, and we don't do it enough. We talk about the numbers that are involved because that's what we have to do. But actually, when you think about the amount of lives that are touched or changed, and the impact that happens, capturing that information is also key. And what you find with those additional funds is that's what they're looking for. They're looking for those stories of impact as well as the metrics. So I think that's what I would say is that, the idea of going after additional funding, it encourages thoughts of how are we going to manage this? How are we going to track this? How are we going to compare it to what we have? And I would say actually, it should be symbiotic. It should be something that is just naturally, kind of gathered as part of
Mhm.
a simple process.
I think you're exactly. I think so. It's kind of the difference between qualitative and quantitative, right? And every single time over and over and over, I think it's just our nature because it's easier, right? To take the quantitative data of, hey, we called 18 times, we did this, we did that, right? And just spit out the number. But the qualitative component of explaining and painting that picture and telling the story, I think is a piece that needs to be included, right? Every single time, because I think you nailed it on the head of being able to demonstrate and show how Steven walked into the job center and then you got your resume written and see the conversation, see the success story and all of that. It definitely helps secure funding or at least apply to that funding when you have that story associated with the numbers and not just the numbers, right? But again, due to time's sakes, we'll open it up for a quick Q&A here. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat here. And if you want to flip to the next slide too, but there are the three of our contacts information. So if any of you do have questions specifically about talent census or serious workforce or engage by cell, please, I know these two guys pretty well. They're not afraid of a phone call. They're not afraid to talk for an hour if you let them. So if you do have any questions or want to learn more about how you can save some time, help with that budget, become more efficient, use some of these tools to help paint your story and the success story and all of the different things the three of us discussed today, please don't hesitate to reach out and we will be happy. And this is recorded, by the way, and we will distribute it out to everybody who signed up and attended today. But I'll give it another minute here. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. But again, thank you, Scott. Thank you, Stephen. I know your time is precious and you shared some of it with us today. I appreciate it greatly. And if anybody doesn't have any questions, any last thoughts, comments, concerns, Scott, Stephen?
No, I just want to say thanks again for the time, and it's great to connect. So thank you very much.
Thank
And I
you.
agree 100% too, Max. This is really great. Just for all of us being able to connect, not just on a national level, but now international, right?
International.
So, just all of us coming together. I mean, a lot of us, we meet at these different conferences and whatnot, but it's nice to have like a small kind of intimate setting to where people can ask questions and just basically let me hear a little bit about what you do, right?
Yeah, of course. All right. Thank you to everybody who attended and have a wonderful rest of your week. Again, thank you to my co-host today.